Well, when adopted as our nation's symbol in 1782, the American eagle could be found all across North America. But our growing population quickly led to the bird's decline. By the late 1800s, few nesting pairs could be found, and in 1967, the American eagle was put on the endangered species list. Today, eagle populations are soaring once again. Their return to the skies hailed as one of the greatest success stories in the history of conservation. Yet the work to save the eagle has had an unintended consequence, one that some believe is leading to the death of millions. Many credit the 1962 publishing of Rachel Carson's book Silent Spring as the birth of the modern environmental movement. In the bestseller, Carson blamed pesticides for threatening wildlife and man. Within the decade, the Environmental Protection Agency was born, and pesticides like DDT were taken off the market. Are we safer today now that there's fewer chemicals out there?
Well, that's a loaded question, really, because you have to define what safe is.
As pesticide coordinator for Oklahoma State University, Jim Criswell has spent close to 3 decades working with chemicals.
In the old days, there was stuff, we liked them because you could tell applicators, this thing will kill you. And they would. They'd literally kill you with very small amounts.
Over his career, Criswell has seen thousands of chemicals deemed harmful to the environment removed from the market, and none more controversial than DDT. Gaining widespread use in the 1940s, DDT is credited with saving close to 500 million people from insect-borne diseases. Yet, despite such effectiveness, DDT was taken off the market in 1972, 10 years after Rachel Carson's book Silent Spring linked its use to the thinning of bird shells and the decimation of our country's eagle population. But what many credit with saving the eagle could be killing Africa.
Many of us that grew up in Africa, including myself, grew up with DDT and were not subjected to the same malarial threats as when DDT was taken off the market, and now the areas that had very few malaria cases have a huge number of cases.
The head of a relief organization, Dr. Ken Kerstead, has worked in West Africa for decades and has seen deaths from mosquito-borne malaria explode.
It's hard to imagine that any West African doesn't have malaria, unless there's some indigenous example that we aren't aware of. But most people suffer through episodes of malaria, and that is also terribly dangerous to young children, pregnant women, older people.
From June to October, the transmission of malaria is very high.
Working inside a lab in part funded by Western Aid, Babar looks for ways to combat a disease that kills a child across the African continent every 30 seconds. According to the World Health Organization, malaria deaths in Africa have risen by 80% since the ban on DDT.
At night, these are the mosquito nets we use generally, like this.
Leaving most Africans with only bed nets to protect themselves.
Bed net is important for the individual protection against mosquitoes biting.
A simple solution that costs about $2 a piece, yet remains financially out of reach for many. While in contrast, DDT is cheaper and more effective.
Sickness makes you lethargic. Sickness doesn't allow the people to work properly, and it transfers through the whole culture of the society.
Which is why in 2005, President Bush pledged $1.2 billion to fight malaria in the 15 countries hit hardest by the disease. Aid that does not include the use of DDT. Does the rule of unintended consequences, does it come into play?
Well, it could be, because what you have is, we like to compare things to the United States. And Africa is not the United States. And so if you could just use DDT, let's say indoors, it'd be a very, very good product for adult mosquitoes and so forth. If you did widespread applications outdoors, you'd have a lot of environmental consequences that would not be good.
I would rather, as a healer myself, see people ingest a little bit of DDT than die of cerebral malaria. And we've seen too many cases where children are brought in at an advanced stage and there's nothing we can do for them.
The other thing is the newer products are very expensive. And to me, it's really not fair to tell one country, no, you have to pay 20, 30 times more for this product than for the product that you can actually get and use and be effective.
At least 80% of human infectious diseases are transmitted by insects. And as malaria rates increase in developing countries, many believe the risk of malaria being reintroduced into our own country also increases.